everyone. My name is Katie Robertson, and I want to officially welcome you to the Anchor at Home. We are so glad you're with us. If you're in a watch party with close family and friends, or if you're on your own, we just are so thankful that you're with us tuning in. This is a really special month, the month of March. It actually marks the 9th anniversary of when the Anchor was first launched 9 years ago in my town right here in Gig Harbor, Washington. And I'd like to share just the briefest history for any of you who are new and tuning in for the first time. The Anchor started shortly after the biggest storm hit my life, and that was when my oldest daughter, Karina, was diagnosed with leukemia, and she fought a 5-year battle and passed away. It's going on 11 years ago. And it was during that stormy time and the aftermath that our faith in Jesus has held us so strong for my daughter, for myself and my family, that I just developed this burning passion to share how real Jesus is. And so that is when I gathered women together. I just felt like we cannot do this alone. We need the hope that Jesus brings. And now we are in 10 cities here in the Northwest, which is amazing to me. And now with the pandemic, there is one good thing that has come out of this for the Anchor. We have now gone to video, bringing the Anchor to you in your homes, and we have been able to go everywhere. And that is our dream and prayer. We're dreaming big that we can get the Anchor started in communities everywhere. And I want to do a little shout out to our new cities here in the Northwest, good old Puget Sound. We have just a shout out to the gals on Bainbridge Island and Port Ludlow and in Renton. And so exciting, we've got some anchors starting in some other communities across the nation. We want to say a shout out to the gals in Mendham Park, New Jersey, and San Antonio, Texas. And again to the Los Altos girls in California. We are so thrilled and excited about getting the word out and bringing hope in Jesus to women everywhere. So tonight, our hope and prayer for you is that you'd be encouraged and that you would be anchored in your faith wherever you are on that journey. You might be totally new, or you might have been walking for a while with the Lord, and that you'd be anchored in friendships. So, and at this time, we're going to start with our music. And tonight we have an extra special guest all the way from Nashville. He's our friend and amazing musician, and he is all the way from Nashville, Tennessee. He's a 5-time Grammy nominee, and his name is Brandon Heath, and he lives in Nashville with his wife and darling 2 little girls, and he's a singer-songwriter, and he has actually over 1 million songs sold, and we are so thankful tonight. He has chosen a special song to sing for us, and we're so thankful that he is sharing his gift of music with us tonight. Thank you, Brandon.
Hey y'all, it's Brandon again. Got my winter beard on. Happy 2021. Thought I would share a new song with you guys as you are continuing on with the journey with Katie Robertson, one of my favorite people on earth. We're all in a story. We're all going somewhere. God's still unfolding our stories as we live day to day. This is mine. I was just thinking, did I turn out to be who I wanted to be when I was dreaming? Back when I was 16, back when I met Jesus. How it felt in my heart to know that God was love and how he really sees us. I still believe it. Just because I'm a believer doesn't mean I don't forget that my heart is a deceiver and there's doubts in my head. But I belong to a Redeemer who's not finished with me yet. I could break it all and he'd make it all new. That's a gospel truth. That's a gospel truth. I was just thinking, sitting in the backyard watching my 2 little girls swinging. Hope I'm a good dad. God knows that I'm not perfect, but I'm keeping my eyes on the one who is. Even though I hurt him, he still calls me friend. Just because I'm a believer doesn't mean I don't forget that my heart is a deceiver and there's doubts in my head. But I belong to a redeemer who's not finished with me yet. I could break it all and he'd make it all new. That's a gospel truth. That's a gospel truth. No lie, it's true. All the logic in the world can never pull me through. No lie, it's true. All the logic in the world can never pull me through. I was just thinking, did I turn out to be who I wanted to be when I was dreaming? Back when I was 16. Yeah, I may be a believer, that doesn't mean I don't forget that my heart is a deceiver and there's doubts in my head. But I belong to a redeemer who's not finished with me yet. I could break it all and then make it all new. That's a gospel truth. That's a gospel truth. It's a new song, so I forgot this is the last verse. Yeah, I may be a believer, that doesn't mean I don't mess up. Cause there's holes in my witness, but he's still filling my cup. For him I wish I could be better, but he says that I'm enough. It's done, and there's nothing I could do. That's a gospel truth. That's a gospel truth. Thank you guys so much. I'm Brandon. Thanks for listening to Katie. She has so much wisdom to share. So thanks, Katie, for having me.
Thank you, Brandon. That was awesome. Now, at this time, we have one of my favorite times of the Anchor. It's called the Anchor Moment. And that is a time where we get to hear from someone and hear a little bit about their story, about their faith journey, and an anchor moment, a time in their life where their faith has really been grounded or they've seen Jesus to be real. And we are so thankful that tonight we get to hear from a gal. Her name is Lori Jeremiah. And I met her not too long ago through a friend and heard her powerful story. And I'm so excited that she will be sharing some of her story with us all tonight. So we are so thankful she's with us. She actually lives in Bellevue with her husband and 3 beautiful children. Thank you so much, Lori.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Lori Jeremiah, and I get to do what I love the most to do, is tell goodness of God. So I'm Lori, like I said before. I've been married 30 years with my husband, who's been my high school sweetheart. We have 3 kids, 2 girls and 1 boy, and they're all in their 20s. I'm an empty nester. Yay! So I love to hike, and we love seeing the goodness of God all around us by nature hiking, and that's a little bit about me. And I get to share my story with you because it's a journey of how amazing God is, where He takes all the ugliness of our lives and turn into most wonderful, beautiful things. So I am known as the ugliest baby in my village in South Korea. I was aborted by my mom, who was a prostitute in South Korea in 1980s. And 1970s, actually. And because it's kind of complicated to tell her story, but she became a prostitute out of not of her choice, but necessity of her life. And when she had me, by the time she had me, she had my brother and my sister. And her hope and dream was that she would come to America and that my biological father, who was American GI, would marry her and bring us to America. But when he found out that she had 2 other kids, he was not going to marry her. So by then she was 7 months pregnant. So she made a hard decision that she had to make of how am I going to support 3 kids when I already have 2 that I can't support. So she decided to abort me. The process that she took was she took a saline solution, which was supposed to, where they put the saline solution into her stomach. What it was supposed to do is I was supposed to ingest the saline solution, burn me inside out and I would die. But God had different plans for me. So instead, he did the opposite, where it went to the outside and it burned all of my skin and all of my hair off. And when I came out, I basically looked like a chunk of roast beef. I didn't have any hair. All my muscles were showing. So I became the ugliest baby of the village. People would line up to come and see the ugliest baby in the village. But if you look at me, God is amazing. I don't have any scars. I am perfectly healthy, and that is my journey, how I started. So my childhood, as you can imagine, being a daughter of a prostitute. She was also alcoholic and drug addict. Most of my life, I just remember being really, really hungry, and she would disappear for months at a time. My brother and I would have to dig through garbage cans to find food to eat. We got really, really good at knowing exactly when our friends ate, and we would knock on the door and we'd be like, "Can we come in and play?" Just hoping that they would invite us to eat. And I didn't realize when people were making comments of, "Oh, she's gonna be just like her mom," what that meant. Until I was 5, that's when I knew what her job was. I walked in on her room one day by accident and discovered she chased me through rice paddies, found me, beat me, and bit me. I have a scar on my shoulder from her biting because she didn't want me to know. And it was hard to understand as a child what was going on. But that was my life. That's all I knew. When I was 9, my brother found a gentleman who was a chaplain in the army who was stationed in Korea, and he started a Big Brothers program for immigrant kids, because in the 1980s, if you're half Asian and half Korean, you are not accepted in the society. So what he did was he took those kids. Once a week, we would go to the American base. They would feed us. we would watch movies. We would play games, and we were treated like human beings. And so, but my brother happened to become my dad's, my adopted dad now, like Big Brothers program. So that's how they met. And one day my biological mom asked him, "Will you please adopt my children?" Now, funny story is, when my dad was stationed in Korea, my mom, who was here, it's like, "Stan, I know you. I don't want any more kids," because they already had 2 kids of their own. They had already adopted another child. They were all teenagers, and she was almost done with her motherhood. And so she was just like, "I don't want any more kids because I know your heart." So when my biological mom asked him, "Will you please adopt my children?" he was like, "You have 2?" And she's like, "Yeah, I have a little daughter." And the reason my biological mom was desperate was because my brother was in junior high. He was getting to an age where mafia, my mom was owned by mafia, therefore we were the property of mafia, was the time when after you finish middle school, that's when they take you out of school and start working you in the jobs. My brother would have been a drug dealer, bouncer, and basically a bodyguard. And she didn't want that. And I was in 4th grade, and by the time, if I finished middle school, I would have become one of the prostitute, and she did not want that for us. So she tried so hard to get us adopted, but most Americans wanted me because I was a girl and I was young, but they did not want my brother. And my mom so wanted us to be together. So she was fighting for us. So she saw the opportunity, so she ran with it. She's like, "Please, please adopt my children." So when my dad wrote back to my mom here said, "How can I say no?" So they chose to adopt us. And so that's how I came to America when I was 10, and to wonderful, beautiful, amazing Christian family. Now, I was broken. I was really, really sick. I had cough of a smoker because my mom smoked all the time around me. And I had TB, and so I had to be on medication. I was really, really sick. And my mom nurtured me. She was my lifesaver. She cared for me. And I never had that from my biological mom. So it was a huge transformation of this is what it meant to be taken care of. Now, going back to my childhood, I'm kind of jumping because it's hard to kind of go down the timeline. While I was living in Korea, I was raped twice. I was molested a lot of times, but those things I thought were normal because that's what I grew up with. I did not realize that was not a normal thing. So when I came to America, there was so much baggage that was inside of me that I didn't even know. So when I got saved when I was 12 at a church camp, God started changing and healing, and through my mom and dad's love, it just healed me of a lot of different things that I needed to be healed of that I didn't even know that I needed to be healed of. There were a lot of reactions, like when we were really low on food, I would get really agitated. My mom used to joke that my brother and I would have like breads tucked in under our bed, because we were always worried about being hungry, and that took us a long time to break. So there were little triggers that I didn't even realize. I got married in 1990 with my husband, and our first wedding night was a huge eye-opener because it was a wedding night. I had a huge breakdown. We had a huge fight. But I didn't understand that stemmed from my childhood, And so there were so many things that I had to process that I didn't realize that God He was so gentle with me, slowly working through it with me. And my husband was wonderful of just being there. I've been married to him for 30 years. Every day he tells me, I love you and you're so beautiful and I'm so lucky to be married to you. All those things, God just kind of carried me through healing process. And, when I got saved, I love God and I believe, that He will take care of me. And I went for it, 300%. My big question for God was when, in 2016, God said, I want you to start being voice for the voiceless, and I want you to start telling your story. And my husband and I have been in the ministry for a long time, so I knew what that meant. So I had sent my children email basically saying, I'm going to step out for the work that God has for me. Mom and Dad will pray for you, but I need you guys to pray because I knew for me, Brando and I can go through a lot of stuff when it's affecting us. But for me, I'm a protective mother bear because of my childhood. I didn't want anything bad to happen to my kids. And so I knew when you step before what God has set forth, the enemy will attack. And so I asked them, please pray. And so they all just laughed at me. Mom, just because you're going through something doesn't mean that we're going to go through something. Well, 2 months later, my son was kidnapped and held hostage. And nobody believed him. Poor kid. He was held at gunpoint overnight. The police didn't believe him. We didn't believe him because his story was so far-fetched. And the policemen didn't believe him. And so it was a big process to go through. And this is when I had to question God of God, when he finally came to clear that they caught the people who kidnapped him, abducted him, it was like a moment of God, how could this happen to my kids? Because I am being obedient to you. Do I really want to follow you? And it was a big moment of, do I really want to go through this journey with you? And He spoke his words of, I love them more than you could ever love them, Lori. You have to give them into my hands. And what they have gone through is ugly, but I'm going to turn into beautiful things, just as I have turned beautiful things of everything that you have gone through. And he gave me this verse, and this is where I had to say, God, I will trust you. I will trust you with my life, and I will trust you with my children. Because my kids are the most precious things to me. Now I'll give them to you. And he did. My son, before that, he was kind of going on his own, rebelling. But that was when he said, Mom, I prayed for 3 things that night. God answered every single one of them for me. He said, God, because they kept telling him, by the end of the night, you'll be dead. And so he kept praying, God, please, please, please keep me alive. They took my car And he was praying, God, please do something with my mom's car. And he said, as soon as he said that, it stopped. But there was nothing wrong with my car, but it stopped. So they had to get out of my car and get into their own car. And another thing is he had a girlfriend at that time that he was like, God, please protect her. And I'm like, how would they know that he was your girlfriend? He's like, because I had hearts next to her name. And they did contact her and pretend that they were him, but God protected her. So she knew that it was not him who was calling her. So God answered, and he started his journey back to God when he was running away from God. And he is an amazing young man today, serving the Lord, working hard, and just amazing, amazing transformation that I would have never pictured for it to come. And God gave me this verse of Isaiah 61, 1-3. He says, He has sent me to bring good news. I will bind up the brokenhearted. I will proclaim freedom to the oppressed. I will release the prisoners from their darkness and proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, day of vengeance of God. I will comfort those who mourn, to bestow on them the crown of beauty instead of ashes, oil of joy instead of mourning, garment of praise instead of despair. And he said, I will call you the oaks of righteousness, tree planted of God for his display of splendor. So I'm here. I'm able to tell you today, as his oak tree, no matter what you're going through, it does not define you. God is with you. God wants to heal you. And all you have to say is yes. We don't have to do anything but to say, yes, God, I will accept you. I will accept your gift of forgiveness. I will accept your hand of help. And yes, God, I will follow you. That's all we need to do. And he turns. It doesn't mean that we're not gonna go through stuff. But guess what? I don't have the scars from being raped. I do not have scars of physical scars from being aborted, beaten. I have joy. All I have is joy. I'm so thankful every day for his loving kindness. The Bible says his mercies are new every morning, and I'm so thankful. And it's not sadness of what I've gone through. Guess what? It's with joy that I'm sharing with you today. This is what I went through. This was my life. But guess what? I have so much joy and thankfulness because with that, God has come in and made into something beautiful. And my son can testify today to you of, hey, I went through this, but guess what? God was with me, and he is so ever faithful. There's nothing special about me. You have your own story. There's nothing special about me. The only thing that I have is, yes, God, I will accept your forgiveness. Yes, God, I will accept your love. That's all I have is yes, saying yes to God. So thank you for listening to me today. Thank you for being here, and I encourage you to say yes. Yes to his love.
Thank you, Lori. That was amazing and so encouraging. Now, at this time, we have the message, and tonight we are very privileged to hear from a friend of mine. Actually, she's one of my favorite speakers from the Anchor over the last few years. I've heard her, and I'm so thankful she can be with us. Her name is Rachael Mitchell, and she actually is a writer and speaker, and she lives in Issaquah with her husband and has 3 children, and we are so thankful she's with us tonight. So we are looking forward to hearing from Rachael now, and thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm so honored to get to speak to you today. I'm super excited that you're here, and I really honestly wish we could all be in person. It would feel so good to all be together, but thank you for being here despite the distance. My name is Rachael Mitchell. I am married to Neil. We've been married for 15 years, and we have 3 kids, a daughter named Hollis, who's 13, a son named Ryder, who's 10, and a little guy named Dane, who is 4. We live in Issaquah, and we also have an English Springer Spaniel named Navy, who loves flushing birds out of all the bushes in the entire neighborhood. Sometimes people also find it interesting to know that I am the oldest daughter of Jim and Joy Zorn. My dad used to play for the Seahawks. He was the Seahawks' first quarterback, and he had a long career coaching, and now he's sort of retired, but don't tell him I said that. Being a wife and a mom is more than a full-time job for me, but I also am a freelance copywriter, and I also own my own business called Mitchell Freelance. And recently I've been considering launching a campaign to make sweatpants an official part of the business casual wardrobe. I'm thinking of going like straight to Congress or maybe the governor or something. I'm not quite sure how to make it official, but I'm determined to do so. Today I want to talk about a couple of verses from Psalm 23. It could be one of the most familiar Psalms in the Bible. And if you aren't even like a churchy or a Bible person, there's a good chance you've probably seen this one framed on your grandma's wall, or you've heard it quoted. It starts off, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake." It sounds so nice. It's so peaceful and spa-like. I'd be so happy if the psalm just left us right here. But sadly, it doesn't. Like with any good story, this psalm has a dark side, some conflict and some pain. Verse 4 continues, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." So bummer. We thought we just got to lay in the grass and listen to the cool water. But really, we're going to talk about trudging through the dark valley. The valley of the shadow of death represents different things for different people. And really, it's a waste of time to compare our pain and situations to each other. But we've all experienced pain in the valley. Your pain is your pain, and my pain is probably different. But we've probably experienced pain that feels dark, confusing, lonely, tragic, heavy, hard, and hopeless. We've all been there. And chances are good that we've probably even visited that valley this year or in 2020. But God uses our own specific pain to shape us. And he meets us right there in that valley if we look and listen for him. But I have 3 good things to tell you about the valley to encourage you. The first is, and I'll go into these deeper. The first one is the movement through the valley brings us hope. The second is we can engage and embrace the valley for our own good. And the third is that God's presence is with us in the valley. Okay, so number 1, the movement through the valley brings hope. I had a very close friend lose a baby halfway through her pregnancy about 10 years ago. This same friend had already suffered tremendously as a kid with the divorce of her parents, and then as an adult, she lost her brother suddenly to an undiagnosed heart condition. I was so mad at God. Now she was suffering, getting ready to lose her baby halfway through her pregnancy. I couldn't believe that this was God's good plan for my friend. It felt very unfair and unkind. I scrambled to kind of find us some kind of encouragement from the Bible. I probably rolled my eyes at the first 3 verses in Psalm 23, but when I came to verse 4, the valley of the shadow of death felt about right for my friend's situation. But then the word through the valley of the shadow of death struck me so hard and gave me something so deep to anchor myself to. I felt like I had a lifeline for myself and my friend. Though the valley of the shadow of death feels like it's a place of stuckness and it lasts forever, the psalm says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we're not stuck at all. We might not feel like we're moving, but we are. And because we're moving, we can feel hopeful that the valley is part of our story, but it won't be the whole story. One of my favorite authors, Donald Miller, says in a recent book that he wrote, "Conflict is not wrong. It is the byproduct of progress. Human progress happens by passing through conflict." If you are in the valley right now, first of all, I'm so sorry. I hope you have the support and the care that you need. But secondly, there is hope because you are actually moving through the valley. You won't be here forever. But what do we do? How do we actually grow from being in the valley? I think it only happens when we can welcome what the valley has to offer. It leads me to my second point. We can engage and embrace the valley for our own good. So verse 4, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, continues, I will fear no evil. And I feel like these two phrases should not go together. They're opposites. The valley of the shadow of death sounds like the scariest place on earth, and yet the writer doesn't fear any evil. What? It makes no sense. Unless the writer sees the valley as the place to grow. So let's pretend that's what we want. Let's say we do want to grow as people and to grow to know God better, even if we're in the valley. I think not fearing the valley only comes when we embrace and engage the valley. So how do we do that? Our natural tendency is to avoid or to deny the valley altogether or numb the pain we feel as a result of the valley. We live in a society that preaches if something is painful, then it's probably wrong and needs to be fixed, and provides so many easily and accessible ways to fix our pain. We drink, we overexercise, we overeat, we overbinge on TV or social media, sports, hobbies, anything that helps us scramble to find a shortcut to what looks and feels and sounds like a way out of the valley. But even though most of these things aren't terribly bad things in and of themselves, when we use them to numb or avoid, they can become harmful to our growth. Sometimes we need a distraction or some fun or encouragement, but then we need to come back to the valley and square it up face to face and continue to walk through it. I think sometimes pain needs to be embraced. And I want to tell you how I've seen this process lived out in my own life. My middle child, my 10-year-old son, Ryder, has been a challenging one to raise. He's emotionally challenging. He seems unhappy. He's anxious. He argues. He was really tough as a baby, and then a toddler, and then a child, and now as a prepubescent boy. We've had a bit of medical intervention lending a little bit of aid, but chances are good that this valley is going to be a really long one for me. When he was about 3 or 4, I was just in a phase of it feeling really intense. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had, a little bit older daughter, so 2 young kids. One of them was always unhappy and difficult. And I knew in my gut that embracing him, embracing the difficulties, embracing the circumstances, and embracing my situation was what I needed to do. I really needed to dig in, to surrender to the situation, allowing my pain, my own inadequacies as a mom to teach me and to help me. But instead, I did the complete opposite, and I got a part-time job managing a gym. I needed a break, and I thought that would be a great way to get it. Honestly, what a dumb idea. It did nothing but delay my inevitable walk through the valley. Instead, I tried to just numb the pain. And 6 years later, I'm still walking through this valley, though thankfully not working at that gym. That only lasted like a year. And we still have really difficult days. The other day, I was super mad at Ryder. It was lunchtime, and I don't remember exactly what the problem was, but I think he was trying to annoy me on purpose. Thanks to COVID homeschool, I feel like I'm this close to my kids all day, every day. I try to hide in the bathroom, even the furthest away bathroom that I can get to. And chances are really high that they find me every single time. And then they ask me a really important question like, Mom, can you get me a snack? Seriously? Didn't you just come all the way down here to the farthest bathroom from the kitchen where all the snacks are? So anyways, here I am. I was in the kitchen, not in the bathroom. I couldn't get away. We were both eating lunch, and I was so annoyed at whatever antics he was doing. But I chose the high road, the mature road, and I just turned my back to him to stare out the window. And after my wild internal dialogue calmed down a bit, I felt this strong impression, kind of this sense, like a pushing, And I would say this was the Holy Spirit, and I heard this gentle word to turn around, to engage, to continue my walk through the valley. I wasn't getting anywhere by turning my back to him. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to hear. I would have preferred the whisper, "Hey, run, get in your car, pick up a friend and drive to San Diego. These chumps don't deserve you." But avoidance doesn't allow us to learn the lessons from the deep valley. So what I tried to avoid before, I'm now trying to embrace. It's really hard, but it's better. I see the movement. I see the through alongside the pain. But I also have some great news about the valley. The best lesson about the valley, and my third and final point this evening, is that God is there. He's outside the valley too, but our hearts, if we aren't avoiding or numbing them, are more willing to listen and to be guided by him when we're in the valley. We need help while we're there. I need help in my valley. And I sensed the Holy Spirit impressing my next step upon me when my voice and mind were there. In that rare moment when I had my back turned to my son, I was really quiet. I was desperately just feeling discouraged. But I hadn't picked up my phone, and so I was just staring outside at the trees, kind of wondering what my life had come to, questioning my very existence, and wondering, how close could I get to San Diego before these kids would come after me? But God is in the valley. The psalmist said in verse 4 that he will not fear any evil because God is with him, which implies that when we experience God's presence, especially in that valley, the fear of evil is gone. And it's gone because what the end of verse 4 explains is that God's metaphoric rod and staff are sources of comfort. But what's a rod and a staff anyways? We aren't shepherds. We don't live in an agrarian society. So though this metaphor would have been commonly understood at the time it was written, it's not quite as clear now. These tools were not to whack their sheep with, but tools to lean on when the shepherd was tired. It also helped to keep the sheep on track by kind of guiding them through tough terrain. And we can still be guided and find rest through God's gentle hand in the dark valley. The staff is commonly known to have a hook-like end. We've seen pictures of those shepherd staff. This was also not a tool to whack sheep with. The shepherd used the hook for protection, to pull a sheep up or out of something, to ward off predators, but was also a handy tool for counting the sheep. So these tools are symbols of a good and kind shepherd who loves his sheep, who guides, helps, protects, and counts them. He isn't ambiguous towards his sheep, just as God isn't ambiguous towards us right now. He wants each of us to acknowledge our need to be guided, to be shepherded by the great shepherd. So wherever you are in relation to the valley, have a soft heart. Allow it to be honest about how you cope with walking through the dark valley, and open it up to experience and learn from God while you're there. I don't know where you're at in relation to your own valley, but God does. There's no formula or 3 easy steps for your situation. But reflect for a second on your vision of who God is. Is he your good shepherd, or are you your own shepherd? In John 10, in the Bible, the writer talks about the sheep hearing the shepherd's voice and leading the sheep by his own voice. His voice isn't exclusive to just a certain group of people. His voice, his goodness, his gentle guidance, a relationship with him is for all of us who ask. Jesus is the door, and we are all welcome in. You might be in a valley, but just because you are in the valley doesn't mean that God is bad. God uses dark valleys for our own good. For Psalm 139:12 says, "The night is as bright as day, for darkness is as light with you." The valley is an invitation towards growth and towards God. Let's join him in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. That was great. Now, at this time, I want to make sure that everyone has that chance to sign up for our raffle. You have until 9 o'clock tonight, and we have our trusty navy blue glassy baby that is etched with our anchor. And when you get this, there's a little card in here with our anchor verse. Hebrews 6:19, we have this hope, Jesus, as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. That is what the anchor is founded on. So we are hoping that you all can go to our website now if you haven't had a chance and sign in for the raffle. It'll be picked tonight at 9 o'clock, and you will know first thing tomorrow morning who our winner is. So hopefully you can all do that now. And then I want to make sure everybody, we want to get the word out there. We're dreaming big to take the anchor and start it in communities all over the country and hopefully, honestly, into the world. So we're hoping that if you're interested in starting an anchor in your community, that you can go to our website and contact me. You know, it's theanchorgathering.com, and it'll be on our screen, and you can get a hold of me and we will get you set up to starting an anchor in your area. And it's so exciting what's happening right now, and we'd love if you could like us and share us on Instagram and Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel and really help share this link. We want to get the word out and bring the hope of Jesus to women everywhere. So thanks again for joining us tonight. We will see you next time, and I want to say it one more time here. Stay anchored, and we will see you soon.